Hi, this is vlog number 2 of the Global Learning Project, and I had my first interaction with Pedro just a few days ago. The first thing we started talking about is what the typical school day looks like. For Pedro, he said he had 4 classes during the day with typically 40 students, and he would sit in the same class all day, and just different professors or teachers would come in and teach different subjects. Already, this is something that we were able to kind of share differences about, because I had 6 classes during the day and had moved classrooms throughout the day. Something I found kind of alarming is that Pedro has cameras in his high school classes, actually in the classrooms, and Pedro explained that they actually monitored these cameras, and I'm pretty sure that here in the US, or at least in Michigan, my school district, cameras in the classroom are illegal, so we were both kind of shocked at that. So one thing that Pedro put emphasis on was that there's a lot of pressure on this test they take at the end of the senior year called the ANEEM, and this is kind of equivalent to our SAT test. It's a required test that they have to take if they want to apply to federal university, which is the only thing that the university looks at, whereas here when you apply, they look at your GPA and your extracurriculars and your sports, but this is really the one main thing that is required to apply to university. So because university in Brazil is really only focused on how well you do on the ANEEM, sports were not at all important. Along those lines, there were no clubs, didn't really have any extracurricular activities. School was only for learning. I found this to be the biggest difference between Pedro's education and mine. I know there was a lot of pressure on us in high school to be involved as much as we could. I was a part of 3 clubs and played 2 sports in high school, and I still felt like I wasn't doing enough, and I think that's because our universities here in the US really look at those things as what makes you stand out, or at least they claim to. I think that's really what makes you a diverse student here, but in Brazil, it's really only how you do on this test. So the final thing I asked Pedro was how diverse the classroom looked, and he said mostly every student in the classroom was from Brazil. So on this topic, I asked Pedro if attending university here was kind of a culture shock to him, and he did say it was a little bit strange at first, not in a bad way, just he hadn't been used to it. So he just kind of had to adjust to the diversity here at Michigan State. Based on what I've heard from Pedro, I would say he's somewhere in the ethno-relative stage of the DMIS. I would say more acceptance phase, because this is kind of a new thing to him. He's learning a lot and kind of learning to accept that people's values and behaviors are different, and hopefully can move forward from there. So one of the main takeaways I had from this interaction with Pedro was how different the pressures are in Brazil versus in the US. I feel like in the US, testing and doing well with your grades is one pressure, but there's a whole nother pressure of competing in sports and being in student council or being in those different clubs that make you stand out. In Brazil, those things aren't really looked upon as something that makes you stand out, rather something that takes away your focus from testing.